So the first part of this Git behind the scenes section will focus on the .git directory and its contents. There's a lot in there that we're not going to talk about, but I'm going to highlight some of the most important pieces in the next few videos. So if we take a look at any repository, I'm going to be using the React repository that we cloned in the Git tags section, but you can do this on any repo. But just to remind you, there's a whole bunch of stuff in this one. If I do a git log, well, that's not very helpful. Let's do a one line. Lots and lots of commits. I mean, a lot. Okay? And then we've got, of course, our .git folder. So I'm going to take a look at that folder. I'll just cd into it. Remember, it's a hidden folder. Let me clear. And then here are the contents. So compared to this slide, there's a lot more. But I'm just going to highlight some of the most important pieces. And in this video, I'm going to start by talking about this one file called config. The config file is for additional configuration. We've talked about this a little bit. With Git, there are multiple locations that we can configure settings. We can do it globally. We can actually do it system-wide, globally, and then locally on a per repo basis. So this config file in the .git folder right there, in every repo, it's going to exist. If you put settings in there, they will be configured for this one repo, but not for all repos. It's not going to change things globally. Now, there is also a global config file, which we won't talk about now. I just want to show you the local one. This is where we can go and change things. We can add customization for one repo that won't affect another repo. The problem is that there is so much that you can do, so many different settings, it's honestly overwhelming. Here is what the file looks like. So the format is a bit different than anything we've seen so far. This is what's in mine by default. So every time I add a remote, I cloned this repo. So we ended up with this remote first. And then I added my own remote. I called it Colt. So we end up with this here. But then we have some settings that we can change. Some of these basic ones like ignore case, they're in here automatically, but I can add on as much as I want. And this is also where we can add Git aliases that we'll talk about later. So I said there's a lot that you can do. This is the documentation, the page for Git config. We can configure Git, we can change settings from the command line, which we've seen before when we did this sort of thing. Git config user.name, for example. When we set this, if I set it to something else, I'm actually setting a value in a file, in the global git config file. But I can also set things locally. So I could do git config and then local user.name. It's not going to give me anything, but I can set this value to be something else, like, I don't know, Chicken Little. Okay, and now if I ask for my local username, it says, you are Chicken Little. And if we look at this file, somewhere, there it is, user name is Chicken Little. So if I set email, local user.email, I don't know, how about chicken@gmail.com, we can see it is just a simple way of updating the file for me, right? I'm setting a local setting versus if I leave off the -- local, I'm updating a setting in the global config file. So in another repo, I'm still Colt. That's the global user.name. In this repo, I am now Chicken Little. Also, we can do a whole bunch more, which is what I was starting to get at. So many different settings. It's very, very overwhelming as I scroll through here. Each one of these is a setting. And most of them have multiple possible values. I mean, it's kind of crazy. So if you do want to get into fancy configuration files, I usually poke around and take a look at what other developers do. They often share their config files. I'll just show one example of things that we could configure. It's, I guess, kind of fun. We'll play around with color. So depending on the terminal you're using, the shell specifically, you may have some colors automatically configured. For example, if I do a git, I have to get out of the .git folder. If I do a git diff, let's just do compared to a couple commits ago. I've got this default red and green on this diff and some cyan here. You may or may not see the same colors, but I'm going to show you how we can actually change that. So there's all these settings under color. If I try and search for color, this is what I don't like. I'm searching for color and I'm getting 151 results. It's really hard to navigate this, but basically I happen to know how to do this because I've pulled up an earlier example, and I think there's an example somewhere on here as well. But I'm just going to show you what it's like. I wouldn't come to the Git docs to figure this out. I would probably Google just git config colors. So I'm going to show it to you over here. I can manually edit this file instead of going and using the commands from the terminal. I can do this. So I'm going to start with color. And again, the syntax kind of weird. I'm going to say UI equals true. All right. And then after that, I can set colors for different parts and different commands. So for example, for the output of git branch, this is the syntax: color space branch, and then indented. I can then change what the current branch looks like, what a remote branch looks like, what a local branch looks like. I can change their colors. So I'm not sure what we have right now. If I do git branch, okay. Well, I'm in detached head. Okay, let's go back to master, git switch master. Okay, let's do git branch again. So my current branch is green right now. And if I make another branch, let's just call this new branch. Yeah, so it's green, and then the other branches that I have locally are black. So I can change that. I could say all local branches equal, and then I can come up with a color. There's only so many color choices. It does go into it on the docs somewhere here, but of course I can't find it. Here we are. Black, red, green, yellow, blue, magenta, cyan, and white. Let's do cyan just to show this. And then I can also set a weight, like bold. But I guess I'll do bold, sure. Okay, so if I save this and I run the command again, now you can see when I run git branch, the output for all branches except the current one I'm on, they show up as cyan and bolded. So I could also say that current, this is just another keyword, equals yellow bold. Now if I try it, that's my terminal's version of yellow. These are colors that you can actually configure, and yellow doesn't even have to be yellow. It's up to the terminal that it's being displayed in. Color is kind of a confusing topic with terminals. Anyway, there's other things we can do, right? Besides just bold, I think we can do, blink, reverse, italic, strike through, dim. I don't know if we want to do any of those, but I'll just show if we leave off bold, like for local branches, it's not bolded, it's just sort of the default font weight. And then we can do other things, like if you want to set the colors for git diff or for git status, you can set all of those commands. So I'll do color for diff. It looks like this. And then indented, we have things that we can set, including old. So what the old stuff looks like, what color it is. New. So right now, if I just recall this command, you can see that new is already showing up as green. And is there any old? I don't see anything. Let me try a couple commits ago. Here we are. So you can see red and green, and then we've got this stuff that's in cyan. I don't know. I don't want to waste your time showing all this, but I'll just quickly say old is now going to be magenta in bold. Sure. And if I run git diff again, you'll see I have magenta showing up for the old, the minus signs. So just another example of configuring things. There are other things we can do. You can change the text editor locally for whatever reason. I wouldn't do this, but you could for this one repo. There are many, many settings, but a lot of the time you want them to go in your global git config. But I just wanted to show you that you can screw around. Well, I won't say screw around. You can have fun with this git config file. It's located in every .git folder. It's just called config. And I'm looking at it right here. Kind of weird syntax, terrifying docs, intimidating to try and understand, but there's just so many settings you can play around with. So you can set them from the terminal, as I showed you, with the -- local flag, or you can set them manually in the file. Okay, so that's the config file in the .git folder.